Until today, many are still wondering, why did Sara Duterte not run for the presidency back in 2022? It's a question that has become increasingly existential for our camp, especially as the Dutertes and their key allies face all sorts of different political threats. Not to mention, former President Rodrigo Duterte effectively confined to ICC detention for the rest of his life, unless something dramatic happens. But the moment that Sara Duterte decided to run for the vice presidency in tandem with Ferdinand Marcos Jr., also signaled her intention to run for the highest office after 6 years. Consequently, Sara Duterte's campaign for the presidency started the moment she became the vice president. This is not necessarily unique. Former vice presidents, including Binay, not to mention Erap Estrada, also had their own presidential ambitions early on. But what has made Sara Duterte quite special is her ability to remain as a frontrunner in the prospective 2028 race in spite of all different scandals and controversies, not to mention existential political challenges that she and her family and camp have faced over the past few years. And so far, it looks like Sara Duterte is the only declared candidate for the 2028 elections. Nevertheless, as we reach the moment of truth in Philippine politics, more and more political figures are being considered as presidentiable. On one hand, opposition leaders such as Riza Hontiveros have made it clear that they're open to be the candidate, the standard-bearer candidate of the progressive liberal opposition. In multiple surveys, one of the Tulfo brothers, most prominently Senator Raffy Tulfo, has consistently been at least second in the surveys, and at times even ahead of Sara Duterte. Yet, it's not clear whether Raffy Tulfo will run for the presidency in 2028, but what is clear is that if one of the Tulfo brothers, including the other Senator Erwin Tulfo, decides to run for the presidency, they will be highly competitive. Not only the Tulfo brand, but also the potential support of the Marcos presidency will be a major factor. And then, of course, there is the vice presidential race. As early as now, many senators, among others, seem to be lining up to be Sara Duterte's potential vice presidential partner. In fact, another kind of unity is being considered, an Amy Marcos and a Sara Duterte tandem come 2028, given the combined force of solid North and solid South voter base. Others are talking about a Riza and Raffy kind of combination, or kind of a grand counter-Duterte coalition backed by the administration, whereby someone that the administration sees as competitive teams up with someone from the liberal progressive opposition. DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon has emerged as a potential candidate of the administration, vice presidency, presidency, or at the very minimum, at least a senatorial candidate. Nevertheless, what's clear at this point in time is that Sara Duterte and the Duterte camp still have the momentum unless something dramatic happens before the 2020 elections. The impeachment may not happen, but the Duterte camp is facing all sorts of different legal and political headwinds. So what is the state of play when it comes to the Marcos versus Duterte race? And more broadly, what are the prospects for Philippine democracy after 2028 elections? Or, to be even more pundit about it, what are the competitive potential combinations for the 2028 race? To discuss these issues, we have a special guest.
Thank you so much, Professor Ranjit, for joining us again. There's a lot to discuss. I want to talk about 2028 permutations. I want to talk about charter change.
Okay.
Because just the other month, as of this taping, a couple of congressmen, the young guns in the Congress are pushing for some amendments, bringing down the age. If you're a supporter of Vico Soto, maybe you would love that idea because Vico Soto is just going to miss the requirement of 40H by a few months. Before we go all of that, let's talk about the whole corruption issue. As we speak, public anger is building up. There are rallies outside the House of the Diskaya. The joke is, apparently maganda yung quality daw ng mga doors nila. If only their flood control were as good. Because people are throwing stuff and it's still there. The glass is very good quality. Obviously, we're against violence. But the Malacanang also made it clear, we don't want an Indonesia situation. Because Indonesia, you know, is potentially on fire. People are angry with the perks that the corruption are getting. But look at it, Professor Ranjit Rye. I remember when I started this whole business of being a journalist and writing, the Napoles was the mother of all scandals. That was 10 billion pesos. Now we're talking about $10 billion potentially if you dig in. What is your read of this whole corruption scandals and what should the government do? What should people do?
Okay, so like many people, for all of us who are watching this, all of us are appalled. Is this something new? I think all of us heard about this for a long time. But see, the problem is, the weakness of our institutions. I guess that's where I'd like to start. What has been shown over the last few weeks is not just that corruption is rife, it's alive, and it's endemic in some sense. Especially when you look at DPWH, how everyone colluded, from the bureaucracy, the contractors, and apparently, these corrupt politicians. Okay, the president's opened a can of worms. It's not something that people did not know of, but now because of social media, because of the coverage given by, activists, and also the hearings in the House and in the Senate, we're now understanding more and more. Okay, these are the percentages, and I think while we're not yet Indonesian, we hope we won't end up that way.
Violence, yeah.
That's not, we're not advocating violence, but I think there is a public outcry. There is a strong belief that there's been injustice, that corruption has to be dealt with. But then again, as a person who believes in institutions, I think the focus should not just be on individuals. It should not just be on contractors. Obviously, it should not just end
Is
with...
it a dangerous distraction to just look at Sara
Yes, it's obviously a very dangerous distraction, because I think a key here are the corrupt politicians who are funding these contractors. No? But then again, the big picture should focus also on institutions. How do we now reform institutions? No? When you look at DPWH, you see an institution's classic, as far as corruption studies are concerned. You have an institution where there's very few accountability measures in place. Transparency is almost non-existent because, and there are places of monopoly of discretion exists. You see how powerful the regional directors are. They're more powerful than the secretary in many respects. People have to understand that.
Yeah.
That the real kings
that's
there
where
are.
The abuse happens.
That's where the abuse happens. No? And when you have that formula of monopoly of power, wide discretion, little accountability, and hardly any transparency in the process. They conduct biddings by the hundreds in a week, which takes months normally in government. And Vince Dizon, Secretary Dizon, just came out with an expose yesterday, I think this was in Bulacan.
As of this taping, of course.
As of this, as of this taping, and basically he's saying that there's so many ghost projects, and the fact that ghost projects exist shows that there is a weakness in the institution. It's not just a weakness in individuals; it's a weakness in institutions. It's very hard to investigate. Beyond just,
so where do you start?
Nominal looking at records.
So, Professor Ranjit, so where do you start? Because one of the things that people found interesting and revealing, although I've been talking about this forever, in the hearing that happened the other month, this is the Blue Ribbon Committee hearing on the, basically, Sara Discay's contractors, the whole contractors. Sara Discay made it clear that they really went big starting 2016 with this flood control issue. I mean, that they were in the business for quite some time. And for some people, that says, wait, why are we only looking at the supposedly horrible budget in 2025? Why can't we go 10 years or 3 administrations? Where do you start even? I mean, where do you draw the line? That's the problem right now, because everyone's doing mudslinging here.
Yeah. And I think to a great extent, the discourse has been taken over by local politics, no, and when you look at the Pasig issue, to some extent, the national political dynamics has also come into the discourse, and yes, that will take focus away from people, no, focus on what has to be done, which is number one, how do we now deal with this forthcoming budget? Should we have all this money go to flood control, given the fact that there's no real mechanism for accountability and transparency? How do we bring people back in to the process, whether it's monitoring projects and evaluating them at the ground level, to having these, civil society organizations join the budget process itself, diba? Making it more transparent.
Participatory.
Diba? Participatory budgeting. I think what the president started, which is we don't know where it's going to end, no, if actually anybody is going to go to jail, because I think while we don't have the data and it's all speculation, I feel personally that politicians, contractors were in cahoots, obviously here. But will anybody go to jail? Okay, that's of course a function of how good, how strong the legal system is. But while that's going to be a long process, what can we do now? So I think bringing people back into the process of budgeting, bringing people back into the process of monitoring and evaluating projects at the ground level. There's so many models already in place. I remember
Independent People's Commission. That's something that's being proposed.
Well, yeah, okay, that's good. I think we have to hold people accountable. But while we're doing that, Richard, we still have a budget to transact. A budget process that needs to move forward. How do we now move that forward and ensure that funds are not going to be stolen, that ghost projects will not exist anymore? The best way is really to expand your mechanisms for transparency and accountability. And then you have to encourage the legal system to do its job, which is to really prosecute. No? I think there's enough data to prosecute people. Okay? And
so heads should roll. It cannot be just performative.
Yeah, it can be performative. Head should roll. But at the same time, we have to talk about, the hard conversation, which is institutional reform. How do we make institutions like DPWH, known for, all of these things, no? Graft and corruption, become a more, accountable, transparent, and responsive organization? At the very least, I think sana by this year, wala nang ghost projects, di ba?
Yeah.
That can be done easily. Yeah. And you can use technology, you can use civil
Drones,
society. Drone. No, but that's an issue. That's really something that we can use. How do you know now that the project is being done? Diba? Can our project development, our project implementation, really through DPWH and through the private sector, private contractors, can we not develop a national construction corporation under the Maharlika Fund, funded by the Maharlika, to be the how you say this, the lead corporation to build these massive infrastructure projects, these strategic infrastructure projects? Can we lessen our, let's say, for example, rethink how we allocate resources for flood control, for example?
Because what you have is all of this shady, small-scale businesses suddenly making it big because they're not really building anything. They're just taking home the budget.
Richard, you have to understand that there are two issues here. One is the ghost projects, the misallocation of resources in the last budget by contractors, by shady contractors, and by shady people in the DPWH. But there's another issue. The current budget for 2026 still has problems. There are allocations there that don't need to be there anymore for flood control. No. Insertions is another issue. We should stop that. The earmarks for infrastructure. I mean, if the Congress means what it says and says what it means about ending this, then we should stop insertions as far as infrastructure projects are concerned. And that the infrastructure master plan, whatever it is, whether it's the local government level or at the national level for flood control, for roads, for school buildings, it has to be transparent. It has to be made public. And that we have to get the public into the monitoring process. Once the public sees, okay, there's supposed to be a dam here or a dike here or some flood control project here, the community will monitor because it's to their advantage that these flood control projects or these infrastructure projects are done in their communities. And let's rethink the investment. Let's go back to what is high impact investment. There's one thing is to stop the corruption, but we need institutional reforms for that. We need to prosecute those who are accountable. But that will take some time. On the other hand, we now have this 6 trillion peso budget. How are we going to really spend it? We're spending so much, no? The Duterte model is build, build, build. But apparently, we're now realizing it was build, build, build the bank accounts of contractors and corrupt politicians. Not all of them do this.
Or the fashion and aesthetics of...
Yeah, but that's a different thing. No?
That was build, build, build.
Yeah, build, build, build their profile, di ba? As a luxury a person who uses luxury items. But the thing
Nepo
is,
kids, yeah.
yeah, but even that use, no, nepo kids, di ba? How we use nepotism in the wrong way. But the thing is, the outrage is there. Let's use that outrage, that momentum for change. How should I say this? More constructively by first reforming the budget process, bringing people back in. Number two, going straight to DPWH and bringing civil society in as far as infrastructure projects, especially those at the local government setting. And guys, we're only looking at Richard, we're only looking at Congress, but apparently corruption exists even at the local government level with projects at the LGU
this guy
level.
has started LGU according to them, right?
Yeah.
So you never know. Maybe
but we have to understand
then. Yeah.
We have to understand, yung Kaladiskaya, it's just the presumption that they did something corrupt. We still have to build the cases. And you can't just say, just because they cornered, remember they won through bidding. You understand?
Which many see as very, very shady bidding. Like,
but how do you prove that now in court? Yun nga yung point ko eh. Di ba? Bakit ganun kabilis mag-bidding sa DPWH? You can have hundreds and hundreds of projects bidded out. Di ba? But if that process was more accountable, more transparent, if people really were able to observe the process, I think that bidding process might get slower, no? And that's also a detriment if it's too slow because of all these measures. So there has to be a balance.
Indonesia, again, had a very important debate on that during Jokowi.
Yes,
And when he ramped up infrastructure spending, but he actually also weakened the anti-corruption court systems and all of that.
Yeah.
And he expressly argued, my priority here is productivity growth. And that if it comes at the cost of good governance to a certain degree, I'm willing to take that risk. So it was a very big debate in Indonesia. Sudden, there's neither. Because it's ghost project. There's corruption. There's also no growth.
Yeah, but I think that debate was also resolved during the Duterte administration, that the focus was build. But build came at a price, right? Not only just loans, but also badly invested build funds.
12,000 flood control projects by Samokan, at least 11,000 by his fifth year. Maybe we want to also look at that. Let's talk about the mayors for good governance, right?
Yes.
So you already have some civil society, local government folks coming up. What do you think of that initiative? I mean, Vico Soto, you mentioned a while ago, like some of the LGU leaders are really making their own local issues national, if not international because maybe this is the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
You have Mayor Magalong, whose expertise was investigation as a former head of CIDG, taking up the cudgels, going after this issue, even volunteering himself to be the head of an independent commission. What do you think about that? The reason I'm asking, the reason I'm asking is that there are critics who are saying, I look at these mayors for good governance, a lot of dynasties, a lot of people who work for Duterte.
And a lot of people hitting each other because they're political opponents, no?
So, are they themselves fully in this for the right reasons? Or this is also them running their own games or maybe preparing for 2020? Again, without casting aspersions, these are legitimate questions being raised by some people. For sure, this doesn't apply to Vico Soto. But there are a couple of people you can easily find in that mayor for good government. But at the same time, they got Lenny in. I don't know if she's still observer or full member, whatever. It looks like many good people like Mayor Lenny are also joining this. So maybe, could that be a mitochondria for kind of a...
It's possible, no?
Pressure.
I want to utilize a wait-and-see attitude as far as this is concerned,
right.
no? Because a lot of people, there's so much drama now. And people are saying, baka this is all performative, this is all drama, whether it's in Congress or, initiatives of all of these so-called local government leaders. The fact of the matter, the proof of the pudding is if somebody will go to jail, if a case will be filed.
Shouldn't we make noise for that to happen?
Exactly.
Because sometimes you need nudging. Isn't that how it works?
And I think, while we're not Indonesia, there's so much uproar here, a lot of social media. And I think that the political elites are listening, no? And they're seeing this, no? I think, honestly, initially, this is a fight within different groups of elites in power right now. And infighting, which is common in Philippine politics. And, somebody opened the can of worms, and just before the 2028 elections, naman how this plays out.
But why would BBM do that?
But BBM, we're not sure what his objective was.
What is your sense? He felt pressured? he's having a kind of I don't know, is being reborn as a man of political reform and good governance. Ano to, Dan Matuid 2.0? Is that what we're
It's
saying? Right?
possible, yeah. It's Dan Matuid 2.0. In a sense, he has political opponents in the House. People he disdains. He's openly talked about it. And in the process of, articulating his disdain for them, he also opened up. He went to the ground and said, okay, what did these people do? Diba? And I think that it was an attempt to save the 2026, his last budget, no, effectively, to get things done, from being reallocated to all of these so-called floods. So I think there's a genuine effort towards reform. There was a genuine effort to expose these anomalies. But there's also politics involved, no? Because there seems to be some people targeted, no?
But this could get out of control if it's not
that's
properly
why it's not properly channeled. It can get out of control. It could break whatever small base of support he has, and in the end up with, no coordination with Congress. And what's going to happen is next 2 years. He's already lame duck in a sense.
Yeah.
Now
and it's going to be weaponized.
It's going to be weaponized by
Duterte's clearly.
But we're not also sure what's coming out of Rappler, and other news groups, no, PCIJ, is that there's a connection with Sara Disgaya's companies with other senators and other congressmen. So we're not sure
Well,
if they can
Comelec tagged at least 4 officials who got campaign contributions from contractors, which is clearly a violation of the law. I mean, probably by the time that this episode comes out, maybe a senator or 2 may face
I think,
serious charges by the Comelec. Yeah.
What is good about everything that's happened, I think people are more aware. And because people are aware, in the end, they will not vote for these people anymore, these politicians anymore. And maybe that might be the light at the end of the tunnel. Because these politicians who use the system to enrich themselves, only become politicians when they are voted into power. Once Filipinos understand that their voting in our democracy is more important than anything government does, than any civil society organization advocates, is the moment our democracy becomes really broadened and deepened. Because people will now say, okay, what's the root of this problem? It's corrupt politicians who want to make politics, public service, a business. So they won't vote for these people anymore.
You were my professor in Philippine politics. I don't know if we discussed John Seidel and Boss.
We did. We did,
right?
Yeah.
Maybe I was absent again.
But violence, diba?
But that's my point.
Yeah. Bossism, diba, in the Philippines.
Isn't the problem here simply that elections are just so expensive? There are no political parties to fund you. There's no election subsidies. There's no what you have in other countries whereby for every amount you raise, the state...
Exactly. That's what you're saying. That reform has to be institutional.
It's so expensive to become a politician. So it's so tempting for them to engage in Mickey Mouse business, right?
Yeah.
For ROI.
Yes.
Otherwise, how can you run for... I mean, if some of the rates we're hearing are true, that per individual, at least 50 to 20,000, I even heard 40,000.
Yeah.
You are spending billions just for some not national office position. You need an ROI for that. So my point is, I am all for the Catholic moralistic condemnation of this. I think all of these people will go to hell, all of these corrupt people. But at the same time, I don't want this to be just reduced to moral outrage. We have to have a systematic understanding that isa sa mga ugat ng problema dito is it's the way our elections are run. There's so much rampant vote buying and corruption there.
In our class, we discussed that, diba? How do you now move forward? You have to go back not to individuals, but institutions. So, one, political party reform. It's now been discussed, no? I think Tito Soto talked about some initiative to reform the party list. Because a lot of the party list organizations are...
Contractor.
Okay. Do they really represent the marginalized? Yeah. We've discussed that in class, diba? Parang, first, the floor is too low at 2%. The ceiling of 3 seats should be taken out so there'll be more.
And Justice Ascuna, one of the framers, actually made a good clarification. He said, apparently the idea was that you get as many seats per the percentage.
Yes.
The 3 seat cap, he believes is wrong. It goes against the spirit of what they were framing.
Exactly.
Because you cannot build a party kung hanggang 3 lang makakuha nyo.
Yeah, kasi kung 3 three seats lang, tapos 2% lang ceiling. Instead of building strong, coherent, large parties, to get more seats, the incentive is to break apart, di ba? To fragment.
Right.
And that's what happens when you have an infirm law like the party list law that needs simply to be amended, di ba? Di ba? Simple lang yan. But, because people find it easier now to get to the party list,
It's
a party
cheaper.
list.
It's cheaper. Again, going to
in
the
a
money
sense,
issue.
it might actually be cheaper and with the same benefits. Now, give that kind of data to a corrupt politician, okay, I'll just run for the party list, no? Or what? Number two, you have to take money out of elections. And you're right, we have to reform our electoral system. Di ba? Try to see how we can lessen the impact of money politics in our elections, no? Again, party list law amendments are part of electoral reforms, right? We just came out, Octa just came out with an assessment of our last 2025 elections. By and large, people are trusting of the results. But what are they saying? Vote buying. Diba? 40% of our, our citizens, our kababayans are saying that a key challenge to democracy, a threat to our democracy, is vote buying. And of that 40%, majority did not experience vote buying, thankfully. But that's a large, significant minority at 40% are saying that it actually has an impact in terms of influencing and changing the electoral outcomes. 70% of that 40% are saying, it's going to be, it has a massive impact on electoral outcomes.
And it has a massive impact in the behavior of these politicians.
Exactly.
Because they spend a lot of money.
How do we now reform our elections to
charter
take away?
change is charter. I'm jumping the gun here because some people are saying, okay, let's not go Indonesia revolution. Justice Scarpio on this show and other platforms said, okay, we want to prevent a RevGov situation, which is not too different from the other one. Let's avoid the crazy ones.
Yeah.
But why not? Let's go for charter change. Just recently, I think Congressman Ortega, the Young Guns, pushed for some amendments. At least, bakit dapat 40 years old? I mean, sino nag-isip na dapat 40 years old ka para maging presidente? Emmanuel Macron became the president of one of the largest democracies at my age.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Vico Soto is mid-30s.
Yes, mid-30s.
Can someone tell me he's necessarily less mature than a lot of these corrupt politicians or problematic people in their 50s and 60s or in office?
Yeah.
So I think that's a very arbitrary...
But I'm not going to change the Constitution because I want Vico to win. No? I'm going to change the Constitution
what I'm saying is, the Young Guns, at least, Prof's feel, there's a false, questionable, arbitrary ceiling. But there are other people who have actually more fundamental. Like, you have to have automatic laws against political dynasties.
Exactly.
You have to have automatic laws against...
FOI, freedom of information.
FOI, anti-defection laws.
Yes.
And something we discussed in a different platform, re-election.
Yes.
The president should be able to run for 2 terms.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 3 years, 2 4 years, 2 5 years.
Yeah.
But a good president has to have a chance.
Stable democracy, no? Yeah,
Let's talk about that.
A stable presidential system.
We're not advocating for it, but we're advocating for a discourse on it.
Yeah.
Let's discuss it.
Yeah, okay. Charter change. The key problem is what aspects of the charter do you want to change, right? There's always been suspicion about charter change to extend terms.
Trojan horse.
Yeah, it's a Trojan horse, no? And what does the Octa data say? The Octa data, at least for the last few years, have been saying, clear, there's no support for charter change for extending president's term. However, we asked the same question, but with a completely different question. What if we change the charter so that the president can seek a re-election?
Just seek, not get
extend.
another. Yeah, just seek.
And what? What's the it's I think
47?
Yeah, 40. Yeah, it's fourth. No, I'm sorry. It's fourth. I'm not sure now. Okay, it's about a 10-point, less than 10-point difference. Okay.
It's a huge plurality.
It's a huge
plurality. More than 40%.
Yeah. 55-45, something like that. Right. Yeah. 45 for
allowing the president to run. Just to run.
And 55 were against changing the charter.
Walang undecided? Walang undecided?
No, we framed it as such.
Either
or lang. Oh. And so that was the finding. I think that's kind of interesting.
Very interesting.
And then when you go down, when you put the name President Bongbong Marcos, the difference is around 8 points or 8%. there's more people who want the chance for re-election for president. If you include, if you be categorical about the name President Bongbong, but this was done in what?
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2003. So of course 2023.
When he
Okay,
was
let me
still
clear,
popular.
2023.
Yeah.
So we asked the question: would you agree to change the constitution to let President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. run for a re-election? And the number was what? 45 for and 55 against, something like that. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of close. But when you ask charter change, it's 70-30, 60, 60-40, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's clear that there more people are against just wholesale change of the charter. But when it came to, let's say, changing the charter for economic reforms, it was much closer.
So people
Close to
are more
50%.
open to pragmatic amendments.
Yes, so people are open to charter change for economic reform. People are open to the idea of, amending the constitution so the president can run for re-election. Only on those two cases where we saw some sort of
term extension.
No term extension. Filipinos love their elections and they love the idea that they can,
have the power.
that have the power to choose their leaders.
But
That's what the data, at least our current data, is showing. But of course, all of this will change. No? I mean, the political climate after the midterm has changed, and so we don't know. Maybe we can, run a rider like this again. Yeah.
let's look at this because there are also the question of mechanics, right? Con as con.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not sure how aware people are of the difference.
Yeah.
Because one would still be dominated by the existing elite in terms of shape. Of course, everything will go to a referendum plebiscite.
Anyway,
But the con version allows for ordinary people
to become part of the process.
You and I could even run for being part of the convention to draft it. Wouldn't that be something perhaps more amenable if people are aware that such mechanism even exists to begin with?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, people would be more amenable to voting
Kasi kung sabi
their
mo
own
mga trapo rin
delegates.
nagagawa, there'll be less skeptic.
Especially now, given the environment that people we trusted to be our representatives are turning out to be, and not all of them, but some of them,
Entrepreneurial.
Entrepreneurial. But the thing is, I think most Filipinos would be agreeable, at least based on our data, to a con rather than a constituent assembly. Yeah. But again, the big issue is, what are we going to change? For everyday Filipinos, at least the data that we have shows that they're not in agreement with a range of issues, but what they are in agreement with is charter change for economic reform. And to some extent, it's still, there's still a gap, of less than 10%. A re-election for president. It becomes, the gap lessens if you add Bongbong Marcos, PBBM. But, that was an old study. Let's see if we can...
Let's see. Last part, this is important, on 2028. I think it's hard to discuss 2025 without discussing 2028.
Yes. Okay.
Everyone is already looking at the permutations, alignments, some very interesting findings. From what I remember, it looks like another Marcos Duterte team up might actually be quite competitive.
Not just competitive, they're the leading tandem right now. The leading permutation.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. No? It's
another Marcos Duterte again.
Yes.
Wow. And then, what I found even more interesting, I'm not saying this because we're in TV5.
Yeah.
A Tulfo could be competitive, especially if teamed up with a progressive senator, woman senator like Risa.
Yes.
I mean, that's again a very interesting permutation.
What's our latest survey? Our latest survey was July of this year. That's the second quarter. So we are yet to, as of this recording, process our third quarter. But it seems consistent, no? Start of this year. Okay, last year, 2024, there was no survey showing that Tulfo, Senator Raffy Tulfo in particular, was going to lose to Sara Duterte, the vice president, in a one-on-one contest. Almost every survey showed
Raffy ahead.
Ahead.
Wow.
And double digits. across,
digits.
even in Mindanao. But something happened in March. What happened in March? Okay.
Someone got archived. Someone got archived.
Yeah. So that changed after that. Now she has, at least in Octa, the vice president's leading Tulfo, who's the second most preferred
double digit.
Yeah, candidate to take over after the president, no? And it should be around 10 points now.
But isn't it also because on one hand there was a sympathy factor, but Rafi Tulfo keeps on saying he's not gonna run. Maybe
that's it.
Maybe if he says I'm gonna run and then does something, maybe it changes.
It changes because in Feb the vice president said she's going to run.
And she recently
Feb
said
2025.
And recently she said that
her
dad endorsed it. So like she keeps on saying, while Rafi is not saying anything.
Yeah,
so,
she's leading the surveys as far as Octa is concerned, but not by double digits, no. At the moment.
So it's still within a range, competitive
it's still within a range now, and it's changing. Not more than 15 points. Sometimes it goes down, but right now it's not double digit. So that's the first. Number two. Rafi Tulfo is the second most preferred. Okay. Now, when you look at permutations with president, vice president, that kind of tandems, the most competitive for the, let's say, the non-Duterte side is Tulfo, Riza, Ontiveros.
Why so? Do they complement each other?
I don't know. It just came out. It came out in the survey. Again, we have to validate that. And again, to everyone listening, these are just these are
speculative,
preliminary
scenario building,
and it will change over time, and other candidates will come out as popular. No? So, what's the tandem that's strongest for the Duterte side? It's Duterte Marcos, not Duterte Padilla. Okay.
And another Marcos.
Okay. So that's a solid. Now they will lead a tool for Risa tandem by less than 10 points. 10%.
So still competitive.
Very competitive, very competitive.
So how big is the undecided? Because I will decide it. The undecided will decide it.
I don't have the data now because I really can't talk about it now.
But it's big enough, right?
It's not. Yeah, it's big enough. Yeah, it's still big. Yeah.
So it's a competitive
fluid. It's very competitive. Put together, something like 70% would go to these two tandems. So you have 30 to 40%, in my view, that's still open. And it's consistent with our previous surveys that independents make up what? Around 30%.
Which is big enough.
Which is big for
the
progressive.
The undecided we can decide.
Yes, that will switch, no? That can switch and just turn the tide. And we saw how independents, in some respect, in my view, my hypothesis, although I don't have the data, changed the outcome of the midterms. So voter turnout and, in a sense, voter activism pushed certain candidates to win. Candidates who were not, they were always winning in Octa, but in other surveys, look at Bam and Kiko, look at Marcoleta. So at some level, we can't expect that these surveys will be so accurate, no? That, it's inevitable that VP Duterte is going to win. The fact of the matter is, based on what we have now, there's a competitive race. And there are combinations that are more competitive than others.
Last part, I want to talk about the two, what I see as the dark horses. These are the two gentlemen who topped the Senate race, Bam Aquino and Bongo, right? Each of them naturally could set their sight on the highest. I mean, of course, there are going to be a lot of ifs and buts. I can easily see Bam making the move for presidency
I think
if
so,
Lenny endorses him.
Yeah.
Because I don't see Lenny 100% sure about this yet.
Yeah. But let me clarify, after VP Sara Duterte, the next most popular, most preferred is Senator Rafi Tulfo, and the third is, of course, Lenny Robredo.
With who?
No, just offhand, aided or unaided. We ask who's best to succeed PBBM.
Which is consistent in all surveys. She's
and
always
so number three. Yeah, but it's a little farther away.
Does it matter who's her katandem to be more competitive?
We're still going to measure that. Okay, so but what we have measured is really Rafi and Risa, okay, to a great extent, versus Sara and Aimee. So that's a strong tandem. And if that Sara and Aimee tandem continues, I think it's extremely competitive. for 2028. Now, looking at BAM, yeah, there's bright prospects. Bongo is,
very strong.
Very strong. In fact, when we ask the question, if VP Duterte is not able to run for whatever reason,
Bongo takes
the most, he takes in all the gap between him and Tulfo widens. Tulfo still wins, but Bongo is still competitive. On the other hand, if it's Sara Duterte versus Rafi Tulfo, right now Sara has the lead.
The edge.
So he is competitive, by far the most competitive candidate to go against Rafi Tulfo. Should there be a situation where VP Duterte is not able to run?
So last point, Professor Ranjit Rye, again, this is how we do things in political science. We look at permutations. This is not Madame Auring. We're not going to say who's going to win.
This is not Madame Auring.
This is scenario building. This is scenario building based on that, and things are fluid. So it's a snapshot.
Yes. What's the implication of the snapshot?
Exactly.
Okay, the number one implication is
the messaging, policy, positioning of the Duterte side, the non-Duterte side.
Okay, so the Duterte side, it's pretty clear. They're in the lead. They have tested their machinery, their political machine. It's now consolidating that base. And their base has proven to be effective, resilient and responsive. And look at the midterms, no? You look at Mindanao and Central Visayas.
Look at The Hague. They're picnicking there. I saw it with my own eyes multiple times.
There's strong support. We know that. And it's not just support that comes and goes. It's resilient. It's a base. It's a bailiwick. Now you add Marcos bailiwick up north, then you have
with Aimee.
That's a strong formula. If they keep that tandem together.
Isn't that weird after everything I'm
after everything
Marcos?
I know, but that's what people want.
That's what loyalty.
Okay. Now on the other side, you have the anti-Duterte forces. If they don't unite, they're going to lose. That's it. That's a simple. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand that. They need popular candidates, but if their movements are not united and coordinated.
Wait, are you saying a grand coalition?
Of course, that's the only way, because what you're up against is a solid, bailiwick. Plurality with solid bailiwicks that have proven time and again to be efficient and responsive. But then again, it's not inevitable nga. When you look at the past few elections, all those who were number one in the surveys lost, no? I know it's fatalistic to say, no, most likely she might lose.
But this time could be different,
right? This time could be different.
Sarah is still keeping the numbers very high.
Yeah, it's very resilient.
3 years into her vice presidency. And I mean, everyone knew she's going to run for president.
Think about this. She's not
she's strong.
Think about it.
She's very strong.
In terms of trust and performance, what's she doing now?
Traveling, vlogging.
Okay, but her trust and performance rate is
majority.
Still, above majority, diba? Above 50%. No?
So you don't underestimate them.
So there's a base of support. But I'm of the belief, no, that in the end it's up to the voter.
It's up.
In the end, it's up to us individuals to stop thinking as individuals and start thinking as citizens. What's good for our democracy? Now, I'm not saying not to vote for Sara or not to vote for Aimee or to vote for Rafi or Risa.
What you're saying is that don't let surveys tell you who to vote for.
Basically, surveys are not they're not a crystal ball. Number two, we don't listen to surveys. What you do as an individual will be more beneficial to your country now, no? And all these scandals coming out will just heighten citizenship. That's the hope.
Yeah.
Make them realize that the buck ends with you as a voter. If you vote corrupt politicians, this is what you get. In the end, it's about that.
Civic duty.
Civic duty. And that's our goal, diba? Civic education for democracy. That's what Team Pinas is all about, diba? You just go and go down to the radix and then convince people that the power really belongs to them. And the more voter education, kaya nga, vote buying is a big issue.
Yep.
And Filipinos think it's a big issue. And how do you counter it? You go voter education.
Prof. Ranjit Rye, I mean, if there's vote buying and then you see also corruption, you shouldn't be surprised. They're kind of connected.
Yeah, they're connected.
It's a system.
Exactly.
It's a system. Yeah.
And it starts with people voting corrupt politicians into power. And once people see that the responsibility lies in their hands, I think people will fight for good governance. People will fight for broadening and deepening democracy. People will vote wisely.
And whoever believes they're the good guys, they should also provide options to the voters.
Exactly.
You should give them hope, options, and you should be compelling.
But compelling is one thing, but united is another.
United,
And
unorganized.
I think that the people who are on the other side, the so-called anti-Duterte force, they have to come sit down and say, okay, how do we ensure that we can protect our democracy? How can we work together so it's never again? How can we work together to make a better Philippines, diba? But if they're divided, wala. That segment is very efficient, very effective.
Right.
Yeah. And to their credit, they've been, consolidating their. She's been going around. The vice president going around, building her own coalition, and you can see in 2026, next year, you'll see a lot of the local politicians moving to that side already.
Yeah, defections could happen. I mean,
they're happening already as we speak. But then again, if you're on the other side, the best way forward is to realize, number one, there's an alternative.
Yeah.
And number two, it will require them to work together.
On that note, thank you again, Professor, for that. Catch us again next week here on One News. You can also check out the long conversation on Spotify and YouTube. I'm Richard Hidaria, and that was a view from Manila, where One News, all sides, all the time.